Hello! In this video we'll be looking at Resource Respond Rescue, a Minecraft Education Edition world. Resource Respond Rescue is an extremely collaborative game designed around STEM skills, sharing, and empathy. Students will join the world by either downloading and importing the Resource Respond Rescue Minecraft world file to play locally on a single device, or by joining a hosted multiplayer session. Students should play Resource Respond Rescue in groups of 2 to 3 per device, taking turns in controlling the character and collecting the appropriate information. Each student that joins will find themselves in a canyon inspired by the beautiful Kings Canyon in Northern Territory, a classic Australian landscape. This starting canyon allows students to familiarise themselves with moving around in Minecraft before proceeding to the ERT Training Centre. Inside, students are greeted by 2 NPCs. 1, 2. The ERT leader and the general manager. If spoken to, they will welcome students to the training centre and instruct them to take a look at the exhibits around the 2-storey lobby. Each exhibit gives some detail about the mitigation methods students will need to employ in the disaster scenarios to come. The upper level can be reached by any of the 4 ladders on the sides or the front of the lobby area. To return downstairs, simply slide back down the ladder. Students can use either of the 2 dispensers, one here, one over there, to obtain a portfolio, a camera, and a journal. The dispensed objects will appear in item slots at the bottom of the screen and can be accessed using the number keys, 1, 2, 3, or the mouse scroll wheel in a keyboard and mouse setup, or by pressing the desired item slot on a touchscreen device. Using the camera, students can take photos of the world. Say cheese! Photos can be recorded with short captions in the portfolio or accompanied with longer form text in the journal. These can be later exported to PDF for marking or class discussion. Using these items to record their thoughts keeps students' teams accountable for their work, and PDF export creates an artifact that can be used to highlight their understanding of key concepts or included in other projects. When the class or group is ready to enter one of the scenario rooms, they should follow one of the coloured lines into one of the 4 scenario portals. The class should be informed of time limits for each area, so that they can be sure to acquire the necessary information from the lobby before departing, as well as within the scenario rooms themselves. Let's look at the bushfire scenario as an example. Entering the portal will teleport a player to the corresponding scenario room. These each have identical style and layout, but differ in their content. Let's start with upstairs. The ERT leader is always present in each room to introduce the scenario. Then, on either side of the entrance are 4 red buttons. These have big signs that warn that these have serious impact on the simulation and should only be run either by a teacher or when all players are in agreement. Starting from the left is the reset button. This should always be used before attempting a new session, as it ensures the diorama and all simulation circuitry is in the appropriate starting state, pre-disaster and without any mitigations. Players should wait until Reset Complete is displayed before interacting with any other controls. Next is the Hint button, where players who are stuck can request a hint, and the simulation will display 1 hint for each missing mitigation needed to successfully minimise harm from the given disaster. You can see we're missing 4 things for a successful outcome now. Over here on the other side is a Clear Diorama button, which will teleport any remaining players in the diorama area back upstairs and out of harm's way in advance of running the disaster simulation. Such as in this room, where running the disaster simulation will set the diorama on fire. Don't want any students to be downstairs. And finally, the Run Disaster Simulation button, which tests the chosen mitigations by subjecting the diorama to the given disaster. In this bushfire scenario, this means lightning will strike and start fires in the bushland. Without any mitigations, the town will suffer serious damage. Ouch. But let's reset. Along the right and rear walls of the upper level of the scenario room, exhibits and signs present information about the scenario and the disaster faced. This gives additional context to the conditions of this fictional place and the harm that may come to it if disaster were to strike. This should be used in conjunction with information from the lobby to allow students to conclude which mitigation methods are appropriate for this setting and disaster. Students should be encouraged to use the camera and either portfolio or journal to gather a specified amount of relevant information that they can then export as a PDF after the task is completed. For example, take 10 minutes to find at least 6 pieces of information regarding the effects of fires in bushland communities. Take a photo of each and summarise the key point that relates to the effect of bushfires in your portfolio. There are 4 NPCs around the room that can be spoken to about relevant professions or measures to the given location or disaster. They provide a more personal perspective of living or working in a place that faces a particular disaster or the measures that residents or local services take to reduce risk. Students can also go downstairs and into the diorama itself by taking the stairs from either side of the scenario room entrance. Down to the lower level. Here, they will be greeted by a small bridge, unless the diorama has been cleared using the Clear Diorama button, in which case a door will prevent entrance to the diorama for safety during the disaster simulation. Once downstairs, again, students should be encouraged to document key features with their camera and either portfolio or journal. Here, the simulation has been reset, so the diorama is in its pre-disaster state and has no mitigations in place. We can see a town made of highly flammable materials, very close to dry and dense bushland, and fuel for fires right up to the edge of town. So let's go back upstairs and see what we can do to protect this town from a fire in the nearby bush. Along the left side of the upper level of the scenario room are buttons for each possible mitigation method that can be selected. Each room has the same controls, but each scenario has only 4 correct mitigations that differ depending on the disaster faced. Selecting an incorrect or irrelevant mitigation will display a red message that explains a little bit about why it wouldn't help the current situation. For example, flood channels for a bushfire. Selecting a correct mitigation for the current scenario will display a green message, and also the mitigation will appear in the diorama. For example, break walls. Here we can see some thick walls have appeared on either side of the train tracks, separating the dry bush from the town. Students should not be allowed to brute force the correct answers, and should instead be encouraged to arrive at the correct 4 through collaborative discussion and consensus. For example, take 20 minutes to decide on the 4 mitigations you or your group think are correct for this scenario. These will be listed on the board for class discussion. Once 4 have been decided on and sufficient discussion has been had about why these would be effective, 4 students will each be delegated to select 1 mitigation each from the given controls. I'm going to select fire breaks, which will trim back some of the trees from near the break walls. Water tanks, which will place water tank bearing trucks throughout the town to give quicker access to water for local firefighters and volunteers. And backburning that removes some of the undergrowth from the forest. We can see signs in the bush where the lower parts of some of the trunks have been singed, showing that recent burning has occurred. Once the simulation has been run, students can go back down into the diorama to examine the outcome of their choices, see what has changed, and record relevant features in their portfolio or journals. Here we can see that because we selected the correct mitigations, the bush burnt down, but it didn't impact the town. We had enough measures that broke the separation that didn't allow the bushfire to spread into town, and some of our backburning even prevented the fuel from being sufficient to burn down the entire forest. We even saved some trees. Let's do a run through with a different simulation. Here I am, a student who has just arrived in the world. I've been given a few minutes to look around the lobby before undertaking the tsunami scenario. Let's take a look at some exhibits. Town survey? Maybe. Earthquakes? Probably not. Fire? Not relevant. Weather radar? That could be useful. Flooding's a bit different. Tsunamis? That too. Definitely. Alright, time's up and I'm ready to face the scenario. So I'll follow the blue line into the tsunami portal. I'll start off by resetting the simulation and taking a look at the diorama, of course. Here we've got a small seaside town, a port, some port infrastructure, a ship even. We've got a harbour master's tower just below me, and some shipping containers. Some sort of logistics building. Let's learn some more. Now I've been tasked to find 4 relevant facts around the scenario room, so I'll go around the right side and the rear of the room and maybe go down into the diorama if I need some more information. Alright, so I collected my 4 pieces of information. Think I need something for evacuation. Think I need to do something about that ship. The engineer recommended that sea walls would help take away some of the force of the tsunami. And I know that it's coming from out at sea. Don't know what to do with this bit of information yet. But accompanied by the stuff I learned from the lobby, I reckon I know what I have to do. Let's go around to our mitigation controls. So we want those walls again. Sea walls, correct. Put in some sensor buoys for some early warning. Oh, that even warned our ship away. There are those buoys out at sea. Put in a wave break to stop some of the force before it even makes it to the shore. And an escape route for the citizens living in the town. There's even a shelter up on high ground. So I think I've got my 4 correct mitigations. Now I can run the simulation. There's no one downstairs, so I don't need to clear the diorama. I can just run the simulation. There's the tsunami coming up. And I managed to save the town. If I went downstairs, I could take pictures of key changes, such as how even though the force of the tsunami was reduced beyond the point where it could damage buildings, the salt water still browned all the grass in town. And the sand on the exposed side of the walls was hit with a greater force, so it's all piled up, and some of it has even been brought inland. But the day was still saved. And now I could go off and discuss with my fellow students which mitigations they would have picked, or, if running simultaneous sessions, how their own simulations went. So that's Resource Respond Rescue. Today you've seen 2 of the 4 scenario rooms. There's also a flash flood and an earthquake scenario, each set in a unique location, and which require different mitigations to succeed. Thanks for watching.